Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Faith. I am now a third year medical student. I am making this video basically because I had a little bit of a hard time with the Usmle step 1, so I wanted to make a video to tell everyone how to pass step 1 and not being as painful as it was for me. So step 1 is a little bit challenging because you will go from not knowing a lot and getting questions wrong because you don't know a lot, which is fair. You'll learn a good amount, and then you'll go to a place where you can competently rule out certain things, but you might be uncertain between one diagnosis and the second one that's kind of like a distractor. So all of these resources are going to go in order of like how to learn stuff, and then when you get to the end, how to make sure that you're passing your test. So I do have a couple notes. That's why I'm going to keep like looking down. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start doing UWorld and Anki. And I was a very like anti-Anki person just because I didn't like, it felt like I needed a coding degree to be able to do it. So if you want, you can comment under and I'll make another video on how to use Anki and make it not complicated. But one of the main things that helped me was using UWorld as a learning platform. Don't let it get you down if you're not scoring the highest, if you're not getting over 60% or getting over 80 or 70%. The way UWorld is meant to be is it's helping you understand clinical knowledge. So the first thing that you're going to do is you can start with systems-based blocks. Start with your system-based block. So let's say you're doing endocrinology. You're going to do endocrinology systems. Let's say you start out with like 10 questions. You do those 10 questions on untimed and tutor mode. Go through the questions, read what's going on, figure out what you think is happening. Pick your answer. If you're right, great. If you're wrong, also great. If you are right, make sure that you got the answer right because you actually know what's going on and you're able to recognize, not because it was a good guess. So if you did get it right because someone's in the car next to me, but if you did get it right because you knew what was going on, you can go on to the next question and then keep going from there. However, if you did not get it right or you didn't understand what was going on, there's two things that you're going to do. The first thing, if you just did not know what was going on, you're going to go through, read the UWorld explanation, read the objective. The objective is like the main thing that they're trying to get you to understand. Based on that objective, you're going to make an Anki card on what the overall like learning objective was. Whether like you should have known that like 17 hydroxyprogesterone is correlated with adrenal hyperplasia, like whatever like the main thing you needed to know, that's what you're going to make an Anki card off of. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to go through the vignette and you're going to see if like the learning objective was enough for you to understand what was going on. If it was enough, that means like your base level of understanding is decent. If it wasn't enough, you can go through and like pick out little things like, oh, I didn't know that a temperature of 99 degrees Celsius or like 101 is considered a fever. I didn't know like 140/90 was considered high blood pressure. Like little things like that that would have given you the breadcrumbs or given you the clue to get that question right. Alright, I guess I lied. So there's three things. The third thing is if you just completely didn't know what the heck was going on. There's the learning objectives, but then there's also the third party. So now it's a content issue, right? So if it's a really bad content issue, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go back and like if you use Bootcamp, if you use Amboss, if you use Boards and Beyond, now you're going to go and watch those videos. If you use Sketchy, like this is the time to go in and watch the video. Same thing for any micro questions. Any micro questions that you have, you're going to want to watch the Sketchy that correlates to it And any farm question you have, you're going to watch the sketchy that correlates to it. If you've already seen the sketchy like once or twice, it's not really necessary unless you really, really don't know it. So UWorld and Anki regularly, like, and you're gonna want to take these Anki cards. What I did was I have my own Anki deck. It's called the Fae specific deck, and those are the things that I study over and over repeatedly because it's something that I didn't know in the past. So even like something as simple as like a vocabulary word that I didn't know, I'll put it in my Anki deck because I know that I'll end up seeing the Anki again. I mean the word again. So like having it constantly come back to me on Anki is helping me remember. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take some kind of practice assessment, right? So doing these like shorter 10 blocks, the way you're doing it, it's going to take you a little bit longer, but it's going to make sure that you have like a deep understanding of what you're doing. And it's also going to make sure that you don't forget the things that you actually know, because the whole idea of Anki is spaced repetition. So that spaced repetition is going to keep bringing back old concepts in intervals so that you're not forgetting. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to, once you've done like all your systems for like little blocks, let's say you do 10 from each system, and you like within the system, let's say you're in endo repro, there's going to be like a subsection which can be like, we already said, adrenal hyperplasia, right? And there's other diseases that go with endo repro, whether you're like looking into diabetes, whatever. So once you feel like you've seen all of the systems pretty well, you're going to start doing your mixed review. Mixed review is very, very important. I would say at the beginning of your studying, it's not as important because if you don't know stuff and you keep getting everything wrong, it's a little disheartening. So I would say like take like a systematic approach to it. Whatever you decide that you're going to study, do like a 10 block for that, a 10 block for something else, a 10 block for something else, and then you do a complete mixed review of that system. That way you have like that, you feel like there's like an end goal or like a smaller goal to achieve, and then you're going to do a mixed block of that. You continue through all the systems, and then you're going to end up doing a 40 block when you are ready, right? So now you're on your 40 blocks. Let's say mixed reviews was like the first like 2-3 weeks or something, maybe first month, let's say, is reasonable. Now that you've done your subject specific reviews was like the first month. Now that you've done your subject specific review, which I recommend that you start with whatever you're worst at and then work into the things that you're decent at. Now you're going to do mixed blocks of 40. So you'll do a 40 mixed block, let's say like you do 2 a day. When you do those 40 mixed blocks, again, you're going to go in. I would honestly recommend doing untimed and untutored for these, so you can start to get the feeling of the test. You can keep like smaller blocks where you're going to do timed and tutor if you're in like learning mode, but the idea of the 40 blocks is that you're going into test taking mode, because for the USMLE step 1, the test is blocks of 40, and I think there's like, I don't know, whatever sections that come out to like 280 or something like that. So now you're in test taking mode. You're going to do a 40 mixed block. Within that 40 mixed block, you're going to do a review at the end, and you can go question by question, which is important. And you can read, like, at this point you read a question. Did you know it? Yes. Okay, keep going. Did you not know it? Okay, now you make an Anki card for whatever you didn't know. Like, and then you need to be honest with yourself and figure out, did you not know it because there was one thing that threw you off, or because you didn't know how to make a good differential between one diagnosis versus the other, or did you not know it because you just don't know the concept? Because if you didn't know the concept, you might want to rewatch the video, but I would say scale it. If you we're missing just a few key details, the learning objective is enough, and make an Anki card off that. You will have repeat Anki cards, but that just shows if you got it wrong twice, you need to see it at least twice again. So it's good that you're making repeat Anki cards if you keep messing stuff up, because that'll help it to stick. Because you're studying by seeing it, getting it wrong, and then you're studying by making the Anki card, and then you're studying by seeing the Anki card when you do your Anki questions. So rank how confident or how well you knew it. If you only kind of got it wrong, then you're going to make an Anki card on what details you missed. If you completely didn't know what you're doing, you're gonna watch a video and still make an Anki card on the learning objective. You don't need to know everything under the sun. UWorld is really good in that you can go into UWorld, get something right or wrong, and then you're gonna look at the learning objective, and then whatever is bolded. You can use like their images, whatever. It's a helpful learning platform. And then anytime you see a drug, when you're reading a question, just ask yourself, like, what is the mechanism of action? Like, save yourself a lot of pain and suffering. Don't be like me and be like, oh, I'm not a pharmacist, I don't need to know every medication in the world. Yes, you do, because you're a doctor, or you're going to be a doctor. So what you're going to do is every time you see a drug, you're going to be like, oh, its mechanism of action is this. And then by knowing the mechanism of action, you can kind of conclude the side effects. Like, oh, okay, if this increases dopamine, then it's probably going to have, yes, extrapyramidal symptoms. And I knew you knew that. And if something decreases dopamine, it's probably going to have exactly prolactin increase in lactation, which I'm sure you already knew. Now that you're doing your 40 block and you're in test taking mode, you're going to do those. You're going to see how you compare to like the average. Don't worry about the average too much. The average is based on people like me who have been through the UWorld test bank like twice or 3 times or whatever. So like, don't beat yourself up over the average. Just be happy if you're improving. I'm also going to link like how I tracked everything. I kept an Excel spreadsheet that like tracked how many Anki did I do this day, how many practice questions did I do this day, how well did I do on the practice question, and how many like new Anki cards I made. And then it's also like a spreadsheet that shows like the different resources, like did I watch this bootcamp video, boards and beyond video, pathoma video, etc, etc, etc. So now we're getting a little bit more specific, right? Because we're going from like just learning to testing ourselves. When you do test yourself, you're going to go through and look at what you sucked at. If you sucked at pathoma, you're going to use if you sucked at pathology, you're going to use pathoma. Pathoma is really helpful. If you do not have access to pathoma, or you just don't want to like spend the extra money, that's okay. Dr. Raul Damania, I'm also going to link his videos. He is absolutely excellent. He's excellent with the physiology and pathology of diseases. So I like the way he taught, because first he'll give you a vignette, and then you'll work through the answer, and then he'll talk about the concept. So it's like a consolidated studying. If you are terrible at microbiology, you're gonna want to do sketchy micro, because the space repetition, because there's a sketchy micro Anki deck that's really helpful, and you can just add that to the Anki that you're already doing, unless you're using the Anking deck, which is also good. Anking deck is like all of step 1. I personally liked doing my own deck and doing the Anki deck, so I had like a goal for what I was going to do. For my own deck, since I was making it, I made sure that I cleared my own deck every single day, and then I did a little bit of Anki from the Anking deck each day, just to like, if there was any information that I might have missed, or just to get like different sources. If you are crappy at physio, again, Dr. Raul Damania. You can also use Melman Medical. Melman Medical, he has a high yield arrows deck, and it's actually really good. So it'll say like, if this is happening, if this happened, what happens to this? Like, it's really good for like like the vitamin D thing with, you know, estrogen. If estrogen decreases, women are more likely to have osteoporosis because you're going to have decreased vitamin D and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff, all the good stuff. So, like, you'll actually have, like, a PDF. You can do it, and then you can write out, like, what you think is going on, and then the very next page, like, he tells you what's going on. Please pardon the noise. I am outside trying to make this video for you after rotations. But it's really helpful to do Melman Medical and then Dr. Raul Damania. I hope I'm saying his name right because he's excellent and he deserves the respect of his name being pronounced correctly. If you suck at micro, you're going to want to do sketchy. Don't ignore pharmacology. There is sketchy farm. I didn't like it too much. What I did like was that I made my own Anki cards of all the medications, and I did the sketchy flashcards because the pictures were helpful sometimes. But the best thing to do is every time you come across a single drug in UWorld, you need to be able to answer what's the mechanism of action. If they're like, oh, this patient is on amlodipine, lisinopril, furosemide, blah, 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 you need to be like, oh, furosemide is a loop diuretic. It acts on the ascending, I hope I'm right, but I pass, so it's okay. It acts on the ascending loop of Henle. Like, you know, this acts on the proximal convoluted tubule to decrease blood pressure by reabsorbing, by not reabsorbing, but by wasting sodium. Like, things like that. Like, that's how you get good at pharmacology. You just keep, like, recycling over and over. How does this drug work? What is it? And even like for pharmacology especially, when you see, like, even if you get a question, it's like, how do you treat this patient? It would like be the best practice to like be like, oh, you treat the patient with this, but then like look at the other options and be like, it's not this because this is the mechanism of action for this, this is the mechanism of action for that. I'm telling you, like, it'll take you a long way. I wish I did it sooner. All right, so that was my phone. That's where my notes are. To boot camp and boss boards and beyond for systems. So if you're studying any systems, that's like at the beginning when you're doing your 10 blocks and like being really thorough. Like, those 10 blocks will take like forever. But when you're doing that and being really thorough, you can use boot camp and boss boards and beyond, or honestly just simply YouTube. I like to watch the nursing videos like NCLEX and stuff like that, because I think they're really good at like laying the base foundation and helping you understand like what's going on, and then you can add to that. For some reason the nursing videos are the only ones that talk in regular English and then go from there. I feel like all the med school videos are like super complicated. Not super, but like kind of. And then integrate the information as much as possible. Like, see if you can get from group B strep all the way to like pericarditis. Like, how does that work? How do you get from one place to the other? Or like if someone comes in and they have pseudomonas and your job was just to diagnose pseudomonas, go beyond that and be like, oh, how do you treat pseudomonas? And then you can start thinking like, oh, am I using a fluoroquinolone? Am I using piperacillin? Whatever it is you're trying to like study, make sure you integrate other things you know from either other systems or other aspects of that disease process. That's important to know. What else? Dirty Medicine for Biochem, they're really good. They have all the mnemonics for all like those obscure things that no one knows what's going on. And Dirty Medicine is actually really good at explaining what's happening. There's also what is it, Medicalis Perfectionalis, like where medicine makes perfect sense. So I'll link that as well. And then there are a lot of people who have done a good job of consolidating the information. So I'm gonna put in the description or in whatever document I send, but the USMLE actually publishes all the subjects that they're gonna test you on. And when I say publish, they're going to say, like, for example, knowing the difference between like pulmonary edema and like the signs of heart failure, or like constrictive versus obstructive lung disease, things like that. And there are actually med students that have consolidated all of that information and like the answers. For example, you see a patient comes in, they got some kind of cancer. It's like smoking is like almost always the answer, unless it's like uterine cancer, and I think like bladder cancer, which like smoking's actually preventive in some weird shape or form. So those are like the key things that I would say will help you with step one. But I would say the test is challenging, and when it comes to like actually taking care of yourself, you need to make sure you're eating, you need to make sure you're sleeping, you need to make sure you're going outside, get your mind right, take care of yourself, take care of your physical body. And then the process of studying for step one actually like can affect a lot of people's confidence. So I would say make sure that you have like, you study enough and you feel like you're at the point where you study enough so that you can be confident in your answer choices. Like, don't go back, don't like second guess yourself, don't like suddenly go back and change an answer. That's stupid. And then when it comes to taking the test, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take a piece of paper, and then you're going to write down everything that's like high yield that you want to know and not forget. So that will include like the biostats tables, like what everything means as far as biostats. There's also a great mnemonic for the sympathetic drugs, which is like kiss and kick until you're sick of super kinky sex, and that's like how you know what the different receptors act on: alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. Like, that's another great mnemonic. I'm also going to link like my cheat sheet. So I came up with all the things that like I wanted to make sure that I knew going into test day every time. So I started making it off the suggestion of a friend, and based on that friend's recommendation, I made this cheat sheet that was really helpful. So that when it was time for like my NBMEs and for my test day, I was actually able to take the first 15 minutes that they give for the tutorial. I was able to write out everything that I felt like I needed to know. And I did this across NBMEs, I did this across CBSEs, and I did this across my free 120s. And I did it again for test day, and those were really helpful to like make sure I knew that like I know what I know, and like it's here. And even if it's test day and I get nervous, I still have access to that information. So for the actual like getting closer to test day, you're gonna want that sheet. You're gonna want like NBMEs that are passing, or like show that you can pass, or like have like a high chance of passing. Be confident in what you know. When you're picking answer choices, they're always going to make it sound weird. So even though you might have a diagnosis, there might be like one thing in the vignette that doesn't perfectly line up, or one thing in the vignette that could lead you to think that it's another diagnosis. Pick the one that has more things. So like one thing that our cog skills person told me that was really helpful was, he said you can make kind of like almost like you're arguing for your disease. So you'll always have like the things you can rule out, and then you'll be down to two things. Go and be like, okay, so let's say this is do I think it's mastitis, or do I think it's an intraductal carcinoma? Okay, like these are all the things that say mastitis, but this thing is weird and might be a hint of intraductal carcinoma. If I have like 4 things on this side and only one thing, you need to go with the 4. Like, trust that you, at this point, that you've studied enough, that you've done everything you can, and that you know the information well enough to be able to pick the right answer. Because towards the end of the exam, it just really comes down to confidence in what you know and being able to perform. So then like the week before you take the actual test, you're gonna do like your free 120s, which UWorld is kind of like the test, but like UWorld vignettes are a little bit more like buzzwordy than the actual test is. And then the NBME gives you like borderline no information, so you just have to like base your answer over like knowing like very specific facts. Whereas the actual test itself, it'll kind of like guide you to where you need to know. So it'll be like the length of U world, but the I don't know, kind of like the uncertainty of an NBME. But the test is most similar to the free 120s. So you're gonna want to save your free 120s for the week of or the week before the exam. You're gonna take the old free 120. You're gonna take the new free 120. What you score on the free 120, don't get too hung up on it. If your other markers, like you're doing well on U World, you're like scoring over 60%. If you are passing your NBMEs, which is like over 60, if you do well on those, don't worry about what you get on the free 120. But for the week of the exam, make sure that you're actually like resting and relaxed, and you don't want to go into that exam tired, because it is a long exam. For the day of, I would say the day before, 2 days before, you kind of want to do something that like makes you tired, so that you can sleep on the like night of and get some rest, because you're gonna have nerves, you're gonna have like anxious energy, and that's going to take away from your sleep. So to make sure that you actually get sleep, do something the day before that'll help you sleep through the night. Another thing that my husband helped me with was like mentally walking through how the day is going to be. Some people go as far as to take a fake exam at the location. I wasn't doing all that because you have to pay. But you can picture like, okay, I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna go shower, I'm gonna have this breakfast, I'm gonna do this, we're driving to the place, like this is where it is, I'm gonna walk into this store, I'm gonna check in, I have my ID, I have my certifications, blah 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 blah. And you're gonna go in, and then you're gonna imagine yourself taking this test. Before you look at any questions, get your mind right and be like, okay, this is how I'm gonna solve this question. For me personally, I thought the easiest thing was to read the last 2 lines of the question. Once you read the last 2 lines, you can kind of rule out a lot of diseases and be like, okay, this is where they're guiding me to. A lot of times you can even figure out like what the diagnosis is, and then go back and just read through to make sure like what you're picking matches what they're saying. Don't make the mistake of not reading the entire vignette though. That's a little bit risky, unless you're like super confident. But that's how to save time so that you can actually do well on the exam. Because it's made to be long, it's made to be tiring, and if it was just straightforward, everyone would pass on the first time. But what you have to do is come up with whatever system that you think is best. Once you come up with that system, stick to it. It's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's made to make you feel, I wouldn't say it's made to make you feel unsure, but like you will feel unsure. And that's just to reflect the fact that patients will come in and they didn't read your medical textbook, so the way they're presenting their disease isn't going to look exactly like how you read it in the textbook. Something might be off, something might be different, but you need to be able to make like strong clinical diagnoses and like know that you know your information. I hope this was helpful. Comment if there's anything else you want me to talk about, but like 30 minutes is the longest I've ever talked at a camera in my life, so peace.